Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers, of course, the Arizona Cardinals. Joining me in our 10th anniversary of the mock draft that we've been doing every single year since 2016. Joining me is Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. It's time. The NFL draft is this week. We're recording on a Tuesday night. So as far as we know, so the one mock draft that we have not seen yet is Daniel Jeremiah's, which will come out, I'm assuming, on Wednesday, which will be out when you finally listen to this show. But Seth, it is time, and the Cardinals, they have kept themselves in the draft discussion significantly, and the doesn't it kind of feel that the Cardinals, that the number 3 pick is where the draft starts getting interesting?
Well, I mean, depending on who you're talking to, the number 2 pick's interesting, right? But we know number 1.
It's one or the other. That's the thing. That the Cardinals pick is like, well, is it a tackle? Is it a pass rusher? Are they trading? Is it going to be Jeremiah Love? Like,
right.
And it's like, for the Jets, it's interesting because it's kind of gone back and forth. But yeah, we've got picks 1 through 32. In previous mock drafts, we projected more trades. This time we did one, and we'll get to what that one trade is. We're certain there will be more trades than just the one that we have, and so we're going to do the best that we can to predict what we have and how, and in terms of mock draft scope, we do pretty dang well in terms of, between player and number, player and team, and then exact. And it'll be interesting to see how things play out this year, because I know for me, when the Cardinals picked in the middle of the first round last year, it was a little bit easier to sort of get a gauge where the rest of the round was. But because the Cardinals sitting at number 3, and we have no idea what they're going to do. Well, honestly, we don't know what they're going to do there, because are they going to keep the pick? Are they going to trade the pick? There's so many things in play that the rest of the first round, for me, was tougher to try and predict. And while we do not, like, some of us, we have some little bit of information that we get from people that we know. I look at guys, I look at like Todd McShay's mock draft. I look at Peter Schrager's, guys who have, who not only evaluate, but like Schrager, he's not an evaluator so much as he hears things, he has intel, and that kind of guides things. And so we pretty much know how things are going to go. We're going to kind of break this up in at 8 picks in a row. Is with 32 picks. We're going to break it down by 8s. Take the little segment breaks, and then from there. So, first off, Seth, we're going to get to the talk of Ty Simpson, but if we are to believe that the Cardinals are going to get Simpson, do we think that let's just wait? Let's wait till we get the Cardinals pick, because we got so many things we can talk about that. So, yeah, I mean, we didn't even get to talk about the fact that Jacoby Brissett is quote unquote holding out of the offseason program right now because he wants a new deal. Maybe we can talk about that next week after the draft. But Jacoby Brissett, who has no agent, by the way, maybe. Well, here's the thing: he has no agent, and this was a little bit of work that my man Howard Balzer over my site did. I don't know like, did Jacoby reach out to reporters? Because he has no agent and hasn't had an agent. So either the organization leaked that information or Jacoby did. And if it was the organization, do you think that was a play to kind of push public perception to want to go get the quarterback that people were starting to get hesitant? Because the second the Jacoby Brissett news came out, didn't it feel like all the fans kind of turned on Jacoby?
Yeah, instantly. And that's what's so interesting is that, everybody loves you until you want to get paid, right?
And we've said it. We said it a million times. We are pro player getting paid at the same time. And what leverage does Jacoby Brissett think he has at this point? Because the Cardinals are about to draft a quarterback. They signed a quarterback who is basically his equal, at least, in Gardner Minshew. And the idea that he wants to be paid starter money, or at least a little bit more in if he's going to be the starter, and get more than this year. He's not going to get more than this year. It's just kind of an interesting play at this point. And knowing now that he doesn't have an agent, the Cardinals are doing him dirty, aren't they?
Yeah, it's been interesting and to see how they're going about it and things of that nature. And the reality is that you've got a guy in Jacoby who, he is what he is. Everybody knows what he is. He's a veteran stopgap backup. But if he's going to be your veteran stopgap, he probably should be making more money than the backup. And that was something you and I spoke about a month and a half ago.
Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, as soon as they signed Minshew, we were like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And people were like, oh no, Jacoby, he's team first. He's a good dude. It's like, were we talking about the same guy that literally said like, hey, I don't care if we win or lose as long as I'm playing, right? Like, I mean, I know that got glossed over by everybody because everybody was too busy, complaining about Kyler Murray being on the bench, because he's this and that and the other thing. But like, the reality was, like, you have a guy that's kind of said like, hey, this is about me and this is about my paycheck. And that's what I'm trying to do. So, I'm not shocked by it. It was bound to happen with what the pay scale and structure was. And he's kind of alluded he's not really worried about the wins and losses. He's worried about, being the starter and getting what comes with that. 1-11 be damned, right? Like we'll worry about wins and losses later. We're worried about getting starts because that's where the money comes in. And I know people will look at it and go, well, he's made $63 million in his career. Okay, so he's been paid $63 million in his career.
But why would he want more?
Yeah, he's probably made 40, maybe 35. And yeah, why would he not want to continue to try and cash checks and get up into the close to the 9-figure range? Like that's just
well, here funny thing about that is the fact that remember when we signed him that there was the talk that they tried to sign him before, and they tried to sign him in I believe it was they tried to sign him in 2023, right?
Yeah.
And where did he go? He went to the place where he thought he was going to be the starter, like in Washington with Sam Howell, and that's what ended up happening. Like, and unless it was, and then even if it was 2024, I'd have to go back and look at the quote, the stories that we wrote back in the day. But even then, like when he signed with New England, he was entering there the starter.
Right.
And so,
and that's the thing is he's a guy that wants to continue to start and to reap the benefits and rewards of what comes with that from the financial aspect of things. And it makes sense. And we'll never begrudge it, but we're also like, read the room, like,
Odd time to do that now when suddenly the conversation about the draft was about the Cardinals getting Ty Simpson in the first round, which we're going to talk about whether or not they get him or not, which brings us to our mock draft picks 1 through 8. Pick number 1, we don't need to spend much time on that. The Las Vegas Raiders, both of us have got them taking Fernando Mendoza first overall. This one is the easiest. This is has there been an easier pick? Yeah, it's the sure thing. What is it? Minus 20,000 on in the bet. Like, why would you bet that? Like, why would you make a bet for that? If you have a gambling problem, yeah, it's going to be Mendoza. Now, could you? Did I write a mock draft? I didn't make the mock draft. This was one that the simulator did where the Jets traded up. And this was right after Kirk Cousins signed. And they're like, okay, well, what if the Jets traded up and then they got Fernando Mendoza? And the Raiders turned that first pick into, I think, 3 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks, and which wouldn't be a bad haul. But then you're stuck with Kirk Cousins. So number 1 overall, we both have Fernando Mendoza going first. Go into the Raiders, blah, blah, blah. He's going to be their guy. Hopefully he plays it out. But we go differently. Suddenly on pick number 2, we already go in different directions. Who do you have the Jets going with at number 2 and why?
Yeah, I went Bailey. I kind of bought into the talk. I'm going to see if that's what happens. I think it sets up a more interesting decision for the Cardinals at 3. Because I do feel like Bailey, if he is available at 3, is the guy that needs to be the stick and pick, right? Like, he's that talented. We've talked about it.
Didn't do it with Will Anderson. Why would you do it again here? Why would you trade back again?
And again, I'm not saying he is Will Anderson, but he could be a step below that, which the Cardinals desperately need. They need, juice off the edge. They need a young pass rusher and a guy that can do it in different ways, and I think Bailey's the guy. But again, it's the Jets, and they might prefer the versatility and the explosive athleticism, and that's where you had them going, right?
And while the betting favorite is still David Bailey, it felt like for about a week that Bailey was a lock. But now things are starting to waver a little bit. Those odds are closing. I have them going with Reese with the higher upside. And actually, it is Bailey being available at number 3 that is sort of the impetus for what happens afterwards. I wouldn't have a problem if the Cardinals went with Darvell Reese. I think it's still Reese or Bailey. Bailey would be my favorite pick for the Cardinals, but Reese is right there as well, just with the slight worry that because it's the Cardinals and it's a guy who's a hybridish player that they'll ruin him. But so I have them going Reese, which leaves Bailey on the board and leaves Reese on the board for you at the 3rd pick. And we know this is, I think we can safely say, based on the reports that we've heard, is that the Cardinals, number 1, want to trade back. Todd McShay said there is no one in the top 10 who wants to trade back more than the Cardinals. It's almost as if they're like, I don't want a pass rusher, because they seem set on getting an offensive lineman. Now, the one team that McShay also said that we know has talked to the Cardinals is the Chiefs. And in your scenario, do the Cardinals make a trade, and who is that trade with, rather?
You look at it, you have the Cardinals moving down with the Chiefs, so going to 9. And in this scenario, I have them giving up 3 and 65 for 9, 29, and 109. So they get a little bit more in terms of the trade value chart, and they obviously get both first round picks, and then they lose that third round pick, but gain an extra fourth rounder, and are able to really address things in this draft.
In this case, for you, that the Chiefs are going up to get Arvell Reese to get that big time pass rusher to add to their defense.
Yeah, and you look at it, they're a team, and Spagnuolo is a coach that understands how to deploy, guys like this, and has had a lot of success with guys like Leo Chenal and things of that nature. And I think Reese would really help out this Chiefs defense.
Yes, and I actually have the Chiefs also making a trade for the Cardinals. So in both scenarios, Seth and I both have the Chiefs trading up, the Cardinals going to number 9, but the deals are different. Why is it different? So here is my thing. I know that the Chiefs, they still want to get a cornerback, and by dealing away Trent McDuffie, they kind of need a cornerback. And so giving up 9 and 29 makes it really tough. Well, they'll still have pick number 40, but this is the deal that I have them doing. The Chiefs get pick number 3 and number 34, the Cardinals' second round pick. And the Chiefs get 9. The Cardinals get 9, 29, 74. So in the third round, and then a 2027 third. And so the value on the trade chart is pretty even. That 2027 third makes it a little more. But here's the thing: the Cardinals, kind of like the way I viewed it, the Cardinals want to move up from 34 to get the quarterback. And in this case, the Cardinals don't lose any selections technically. So they're going to move back 6 in round 1. They're going to move up 6, move up 5 to get back into round 1, and they retain they get an extra third. And in the conversation that we've had in our group chats is that early third is a kind of good, it's kind of a sweet area. And so while they give up their 34, they're basically using their second round pick to get into the first round. And hopefully what the plan is that they're going to use that pick to get a quarterback, and we'll see how that goes. So yeah, the deals are different. I have the Chiefs moving up to get David Bailey. Basically, it's the same scenario. They have a pass rusher. They want a pass rusher. And so they're willing to go up and get it. Only this, in this case, the Chiefs only move back from that 29 instead of having to give it all up. And that way they still have 34 and 40 to where they can either move up and get the corner they want or grab one of the corners early in the second round. So you have them. You have 3 and 65 going to the Chiefs for 929 and 109, while I have 3 and 34 going to the Chiefs for 929, 74, and then a 2027 third, which I know, Monty Austinport loves to stack those future picks as well. So through 3 picks, the same 3 players are off the board. What happens at pick number 4? The Tennessee Titans. I'm not going to believe that all the hype and I don't believe that it's smokescreen. The odds, I think while Robert Saleh might want to add defense, I'm saying they're going to go with Jeremiah Love. They're going to give support to Cam Ward to kind of build up that offense and take some of the pressure off of him. I have them going Jeremiah Love. Where do you have the Titans going?
I think they're going to go with their hope to get their version of Fred Warner and Sonny Styles.
Okay. Now we have diverged a little bit. That brings us to the New York Giants, who now have 2 picks in the top 10. They've got the 5th and the 10th picks. You have them going with Caleb Downs. What's the thought process there at number 5?
Yeah, I went back and forth and I thought about it a little bit, and I even really kind of contemplated the idea of I even kind of had a thought of putting Jeremiah Love there, but in the end, the debate of Carnell Tate versus Jordan Tyson, and that'll come in a second, led to, well, Caleb Downs, who many know I think is one of the best players, if not the best player in this draft, can play under John Harbaugh, can learn under John Harbaugh, and they is a guy that they can build, their have on their defense and kind of start anew under Harbaugh. So I went Caleb Downs with the 5th pick.
I almost went with Sonny Styles at number 5, and some of the hype is the fact that they talk about how John Harbaugh doesn't go to pro days. He was there for Sonny Styles pro day. Almost went that direction. However, with a young quarterback in Jackson Dart, I have them going with protection, and perhaps the Cardinals moving back to number 9, maybe they're hoping he's available. He's not going to be available. I have them going with the tackle, Francis Mauigoa out of Miami, with the idea of protecting Jackson Dart. And since you really have to also protect Jackson Dart because he will not protect himself. So I've got them protecting him while we go to pick number 6, which is the Cleveland Browns, but we both are locked in the same one. We have them taking Ohio State receiver Carnell Tate, which makes all the sense in the world. What was your thinking for that?
I just, whoever they think is the top pass catcher on the board, I think it fits to what they need, and in this case they go local, not really local, but local kid, and that'll give them a weapon for, I guess we're back to Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson shooters. Who knows what they're doing? Which if we get into maybe the Browns become a problem with Ty Simpson. That's one I didn't even consider. Go to pick number 7, Washington Commanders. You have them adding Jeremiah Love, pairing him with Jaden Daniels, which is honestly kind of the idea that I had for the Titans taking him to pair him with Cam Ward. You get Love to take some of the pressure off Daniels, especially after that injury-riddled season last year.
Yeah, and you look at it, right? A guy in Love comes back, is able to really help out the offense. I know Cliff's gone, but like you said, take some pressure off Jaden Daniels and hopefully help him get back to a high level. And again, Styles for you, just maybe the safest, most complete player in the draft, right?
Yes, and here's the thing that Dan Quinn would love Sonny Styles, and this is simply a case where if he's there, he's taking them, he's getting them. So it's a matter of whether he goes 4, 5, or 7. I don't like the Styles. Dan Quinn's going to be very, very happy with that pick, and their defense could use. And they had Bobby Wagner. Sonny Styles can just carry that legacy on. Which brings us to number 8 and the New Orleans Saints. As we wrap up the first quarter of the first round, we have them going different directions. I have them going with the guy who will ideally give Tyler Shuck someone to throw to. And, with Chris Olave and the injuries that he had, they get basically a Chris Olave clone, including with the injury concerns, and Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. Having watched him myself as an Arizona State season ticket holder, when he is on the field, he is special. He has great hands. He has great moves and great routes. He's got the athleticism. He's got the mentality. If he can beat that injury bug, he's going to be great. But you don't have him going receiver. Which way do you have him going?
Yeah, I think they take the guy that I would love to take at 3, but between the perceived off-field issue and then the questionable build. Reuben Bain falls slightly, goes to the Saints, who need a pass rusher, and maybe get the best one in the draft.
That's right. And that rounds up the first quarter of the mock draft that we have. Coming up next on the Res Is Here podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. We'll come back. The Cardinals will make their pick, and we'll get the next 8 picks total. That's coming up next on Res Is Here. We're back on the Rise of Secret podcast, special Cardinals talk on the web. We've wrapped up the first quarter, 8 picks of the first round of the NFL draft of our yearly mock draft. And that brings us to pick number 9. The Cardinals now have this pick because we had the Chiefs trading up to number 3. And that brings us to the 9th pick. And guess what? We both have them taking the same player, even though, Seth, this is an interesting one. We both have them taking offensive lineman Spencer Fanu out of Utah. For me, that makes sense because Mawanoa is already off the board. In your case, Mawanoa is still available. What is the thinking with Fanu there?
I just am, and I know they think the disc issue will not be an issue, but I feel like Fanu is in the idea of picks is good enough to be a right tackle, but at worst could be a really good right guard. I don't really think you can go wrong there if they're both on the board, but I look at the Mawanoa injury concerns and the fact that they've been leaked so heavily recently that either where there's smoke, there's actual fire, or a team like Kansas City who needs, tackle help, or a team like the Giants who maybe they, want to take Carnell Tate or Jordan Tyson at 5, would like a guy like Mawanoa to fall, whether it be to them or to push down a guy like Fanu, right? So that's the thing. We're in the subterfuge season, and it's never been more apparent than this season where the talent is clearly less. And so I went with Fanu just because I hate saying it this way, but it almost just seems like the safer of the two, right?
Well, that makes sense. And my thought process is kind of what Todd McShay was saying, is that they're desperate. Like the Cardinals' number one priority with that 3rd pick is to trade back to get a tackle. Now, if Mawanoa is not on the board, Fano is going to be the guy. And so that's why I have them. So that based on what we have read, heard, whatnot, this is basically, I have the Cardinals' first round going more or less the way they want it. And so while it's not Mawanoa, Fanu is a fine pick. And I can't remember who it was that I think it was Bucky Brooks. He believes that Fanu has all-pro potential. And so that would be a great addition. Although I would mark this would be the first time in 4 years that the Cardinals would be selecting a player outside of the Big Ten or SEC in round 1. And they haven't even done that in round 2. So in 3 years, they've only selected players from the SEC and Big Ten. I know I've mentioned that a lot over the last many weeks, but that's because, 3 years in a row, that's kind of a trend. And so if he breaks that, then we know it's not a hard set rule. If they end up with Arvell Reese, it's hard to deny that pattern. We move on to number 10 with the New York Giants.
Let me ask you real quick though,
yeah.
And I guess I mean it would still fall in this, but if they take Jeremiah Love, like that would be like a double outside the box, right? Like
yes, not the right, not a premium position, because he, that's what we've said about Monty Ossenfort since, like, his draft philosophy is get premium players. Though we'll say this. As the more we hear, when Todd McShay says that there's a voice that carries a lot of weight that's pushing for Love, we know who that has to be, because the only voice that has weight like that would be the owner. And Mike LaFleur's not going to have that weight yet. Monty Ossenfort wouldn't talk about Jeremiah. He's the one who wants to trade back. It'd be interesting. Would Bidwill force the hand with Jeremiah Love?
I know that's such an interesting question and dynamic, right? Um, to think about in terms of that pick in this draft. And I've seen people's thought process and they're like, well, you got to get the best player in the draft, and he might be the best player in the draft. And I don't necessarily disagree, but we can say this outside of maybe receiver, because you have to have a good quarterback, right?
Yes.
Running back is such a position that is so reliant. I mean, don't get us wrong. We both really like Jeremiah Love's skill set. But outside of Barry Sanders, what running back was great that didn't, have a good offensive line? And
Well, I'll put it another way. Take the very best running backs. When have they impacted their original team so much that they're playoff teams?
right. And that's what I'm saying is like outside of Barry Sanders, I mean, don't get us wrong. Adrian Peterson was phenomenal and dealt with some crap, uh, you know, uh, quarterbacks and situations. So maybe he's one, but like, yeah, I mean,
It
you
was
look
so
at
long ago.
well,
Like
and I did.
Christian McCaffrey,
I was gonna
the
say
impact that he has on the he's not the first team.
I
Like
did it
Jonathan Taylor hasn't done it for Saquon did it for the Eagles, not the Giants.
right, and I did a kind of deep dive on that, man. And what was really interesting is, you know, the the production from them was never in question. CMC, I think, was a two-time Pro Bowler and had
Was
an
a
All-Pro level.
thousand guy in Carolina.
Yeah, had an All-Pro season. Saquon was a Rookie of the Year and Pro Bowl level. I think he was a two-time Pro Bowler there, second team All-Pro once. In 11 and a half seasons combined, they had two winning seasons. So like
Yeah.
that's just it. Like it's just
A great running back takes a good team and puts them over the top. Look at
right.
what Saquon did to Philadelphia. Look what Christian McCaffrey did for San Francisco. Look what Derrick Henry did for the Baltimore Ravens. But it's always the second team. It's always the next team they go to.
Right, and that's
Like
what you have to
Bijan
look
Robinson,
at.
he's going to go somewhere outside of Atlanta and make that team great.
Well, and that's a great point right there, Jess. What, like, do you think Love is as good as Bijan Robinson coming out? Genuine question.
Close, but I don't know.
And so that's just it. Like, that's the one we can point to that's, current and real close to home. And yeah, I just don't see it. And so like it's not a shot. It doesn't mean anything in a negative sense, but the reality is like, what are we doing?
Oh, with the 9th pick, this is something we didn't talk about, but here is if we're going to go crazy. There is a scenario if the Cardinals have made a trade with the Chiefs and then they now have 2 first-round picks. Ty Simpson at 9 isn't the craziest thing we have heard. Now, it'll come out, it'll feel crazy, but this would be like Michael Penix's situation. And hopefully it's not the result of Michael Penix. But here is if the Cardinals are dead set on Ty Simpson, there's a couple of pivot points in this draft. One is at number 16 with the New York Jets. And the Jets have Geno Smith. If they believe that Ty Simpson is good, they could take him right there with that second first-round pick. The Pittsburgh Steelers at 21. Okay. Aaron Rodgers still hasn't told them whether he's coming back. Now, with Mike McCarthy, now we think that's probably going to happen, but, they could just draft Ty Simpson. Those two spots, because even at 29, like if he gets past, if Simpson gets past 16 and he gets past 21, where the Cardinals sit at 29 with after a trade, you feel pretty safe with that. Or even if they don't trade, okay, if they don't get number 29, or if they're trading up from 34, the Jets and the Steelers could really make things difficult, because moving up from 34 up to number 15 or 14, that's a very, very expensive move. And so say, even for example, if it's the Saints that move up, now the Cardinals would not get a second first round pick. There is a scenario where I could see that the Cardinals take Ty Simpson with their first pick. How bad? Like, how do you think fans would take that?
Yeah, man, and that's the hard part. Is you look at this, and the way that everything is working out, if they end up with Kansas City or Dallas, and they get 2 first-round picks, you do feel like there's a reality that 9 or 12, it could be Ty Simpson.
It could be.
Because they feel like they need to make that splash, right?
Yeah, and make sure they get him because they like him. At 20 and 29, now here's the thing. If this played out, you could have, especially if the Cardinals end up keeping 34, in your scenario, if the Cardinals ended up with Ty Simpson, a tackle like Blake Miller or Max Ahinachor at 29, and then added a pass rusher, say they got TJ Parker or Malachi Lawrence or one of those guys at 34, would that be that bad? Round 1 and round 2 haul? Because if we've been saying take pass rusher, tackle, or like you've got those 3, keystone needs that the Cardinals have, and they hit all 3 of them, does it matter in what order if they get them?
No, and that's really what it is, right? Unless you think that the Bailey or Bain is just that dynamic that you can't pass it up. It's hard to see it being a negative, right? Like how they go about it. The reality just becomes you just have to look at the way that they attack this, because and take it from that perspective. Like you said, if Bailey or Reese become an all-pro, and the
Will
Cardinals
Anderson again. You're like, come on.
And the Cardinals move down. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens with that 9th pick. Reality becomes, if they end up with Ty Simpson better be a franchise level quarterback, because you've once again passed over a pass rushing dynamo, and so you got to justify that, and that's just where we're at. And it's the curse of being a Cardinals fan. We've talked about it, right? You pass on Tristan Wirfs and CeeDee Lamb for Isaiah Simmons, right? We've seen that this team consistently passes on what look like sure things for the flashy, shiny object. And we go back to, we love Paris Johnson. We've said what the issue and what Paris Johnson has to do at this rate. But the truth of the matter is, like, Will Anderson is maybe a top 7 defensive player in the NFL, maybe even top 5 already.
Wow.
And
he's
good. We love Paris, but he's not even a Pro Bowl player. So
he's not.
And so, like, that's just the way you have to look at it. So it's just, the Cardinals cannot afford to whiff if they do move down. And that's why, I mean, not, to close this, that's why the Love conversation makes sense, because, maybe he is Bijan Robinson. And so you have an all-pro player on a bad
Yes.
team. Who cares, right? Like, we have an all-pro
But
running
it's
back.
exciting. But it's
Right.
exciting.
Right.
It's
And
exciting.
so like, I get that. I really do get that concept.
We were about to move on to 10. We get back to the New York Giants. We have them going two different ways. Now, interestingly enough, Seth had the Giants taking Ohio State safety Caleb Downs 5th. I have them taken Downs with the 10th pick. So for the same reason Seth has him going number 5, I have them going at number 10. And this way, with those 2 first-round picks, not only do they protect Jackson Dart, they get a dynamic player for the back end of their defense. And you have them going offensive help, not protection, but weapon.
Yeah, I have them go with Jordan Tyson. He reunites with Scatabo, gets a weapon for Jackson Dart. And then you look at it, right, and a guy that can potentially take some pressure off of Malik Neighbors when he comes back, right? Like, he doesn't have to be Malik Neighbors right away, and so maybe that takes just something off.
Move on to number 11, the first of 2 picks for the Miami Dolphins. I have them going, they need a receiver, and after trading away Jalen Waddle. And so I have them going with Mekhi Lemon out of USC. He is a really good Jalen Waddle replacement, but you have them going protection.
Yeah, I went Francis Maunoa. Again, I don't think you can go wrong with either of these picks. A guy that can help you immediately along the lines and be a guy to protect Malik Willis, or a weapon, and you hope that Malik Willis is protected just enough to get the ball to Mekhi Lemon, who's going to be a dynamic player, right?
Yes, and which takes us to the Dallas Cowboys at number 12. They have 2 picks. They were a team who perhaps could move up to the Cardinals, or maybe the Chiefs can deke into paying too much to get up to number 3. But we both have them going defense. I have them going with the pass rusher, Reuben Bain, kind of the guy who can potentially replace Micah Parsons, but in a different way. You have them going with the secondary. And the first cornerback comes off the board.
Yeah, and Mansour Delani is just a freak. We talked about him the other day in our cornerback preview. He is a dynamic playmaker. Honestly, like, if the Cardinals had the gumption, taking him with their first pick would not be a bad thing, because I think he's going to be that good. It's just, how much more can you invest in the corner position? I know they don't have one. It's something Jess and I talk about all the time, but at some point you have to have one of those guys pan out. You can't just keep throwing picks at it when you have no talent at other positions, right?
Correct. Which takes us to the LA Rams at number 13. For you, it looks like a layup pick, right? It's a layup pick for you. You have them taking USC receiver Mekhi Lemon, who went to number 11 in my draft. What do you like about Lemon and his match for the Rams?
Yeah, I just think he gives them a dynamic target that can work, inside out, and pair up with hopefully Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, right? But like, he's a guy that would be close to where he went to college, obviously. Dynamic playmaker with the ball in his hands. He's a talented kid.
And you can tell I was listening to the Todd McShay podcast that was earlier this week. There was a conversation on the McShay podcast about, while it's easy to peg these first round receivers, whether it's Lemon or it's Cooper out of Indiana, as guys who would be perfect fits for the Rams there at 13. But the conversation was this: scheme wise, they know the type of receiver they want and the type of production that they a guy in round 2, round 3, round 4, kind of like what they did with Puka Nacua, or dating back to Cooper Kupp, who was a third round pick. You get a guy who's a perfect match to your system and who can block his tail off in the run game. Maybe you don't have to use that 13 pick to get a guy that's going to be that productive, and you love those guys, and knowing that, and knowing as well that the Rams, their defense, and in particular their secondary, was a problem last year. Their secondary was okay. They went out and got Trent McDuffie. I have them taking the first corner off the board in Mansour Delane. And so in this case, Delane comes off the board, but this is the Rams loading up to combat the pass catchers in San Francisco and Seattle.
Yeah, and that's a smart play, and that takes us to a team that it's going to be a little different for the first time, but man, do they draft well pretty much all the time, right?
They do. We go to the Baltimore Ravens at number 14. We both have them taking offensive lineman, but you have the first guard coming off the board. I have them taking Alabama's Caden Proctor, a guy they can plug in right away. Who do you have them taking?
Yeah, Vega Ione. Just, again, I think when you're talking about dynamic, powerful, plug and play type of guys, Ione is just that, and he's going to be a guy that just gives them, he's probably going to be an all-pro, and people are going to be like, I can't believe the Ravens got him at 14. Isn't that where they drafted Kyle Hamilton too? I think it was like 14-ish. So.
All right, so Tampa Bay with the 15th pick. We both have them going defense, but in different spots. I considered having them going with edge. Who is your guy that you have them taking at number 15?
Yeah, I went with Kelvin Falk. Or Keldrick Falk. Excuse me, Keldrick Falk, the tight end or the defensive end. Out of Auburn. He fits the Todd Bowles defense, long, strong. Maybe not the best pass rusher right now, but has the upside of it. And the Bowles defense, they love to be kind of that physical upfront type. Falk really fits that. And by the way, I love your pick here. Like I haven't seen it anywhere else. This is literally the first place I've seen it, but I love it.
I have him going with Oregon safety Dylan Thieneman, a guy that I can't remember but there's a couple of teams that really like him. Putting him back in that at the back end of that for Todd Bowles, who is a defensive backs guy at his core. Going to be interesting to see, kind of loading up that defense, which they definitely need to get better on defense for. And that rounding out the first half of the first round, we go to the New York Jets with their second pick, and we have them. We are one and the same here. They're going with a receiver. They're going with Omar Cooper out of Indiana. They need someone to go alongside of Garrett Wilson. What do you like about Cooper at that pick?
Yeah, man. I mean, you just look at the way that Cooper fits into what they do. There might be wide receivers that end up being better players, but just Omar Cooper is going to come in. He's going to be a solid contributor. And I think the fact that a guy like Omar Cooper, right, he comes out, he kind of knows who he is in his role, and he's going to fill it. I hate, comparing too much, but like a guy that can win from different spots is a big play threat wherever he's at. And this is a guy that is able to produce in terms of touchdowns, 20 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. Like, he's just a very talented fit for this group.
That takes us to the next part. So coming up next on the Res Receiver podcast, episode of Cardinals Talk. Let's go to the third quarter of the first round of the NFL draft in our mock draft, the 17 through 24. That's coming next on Res Red. We're back on the Rise of Seared podcast, SR Cardinals Talk on the web. We moved on to pick 17. We got the Detroit Lions. This was not this is not the pick that I originally had for him, but that's because I had them. I doubled up on a name, so this is what ended up going. We both end up going with the same guy, Monroe Freeling, the tackle out of Georgia. The thing is they're moving Penei Sewell to the left side. Would they change their mind by drafting Monroe Freeling and keeping Sewell on the right side and putting Freeling out there, or do they want to continue with Sewell on the left and then have Freeling play the right side, which he didn't do in college?
Yeah, and that's an interesting decision they get to make with Freeling. But the nice thing is they get some options and a guy that fits into what they like to do. A talented athlete with upside. I think he fits in with the Lions and where they're at in their process.
Number 18, the Minnesota Vikings. You have them going with the guy had come off the board at number 15, at Dylan Thieneman. What do you like about that fit?
Yeah, I mean, you just look at it, they're in the space for a safety. I did not double check, but if Harrison Smith does come back, he's still 97 years old, right? It's close to the end for him either way. So it's cool to get, a young, talented safety that can offer something that they don't have right now.
And for me, I have them going with the tight end, Kenyon Sadiq. They come off the board. TJ Hawkinson getting older.
I really like that pick. I almost went there instead, and I went back and forth, and that was a tough one, man, because I do like the Sadiq pick there.
We're gonna give Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy. No, Kyler Murray. We're going to give Kyler Murray a big-time tight end to he's going to have weapons upon weapons. He's going to have weapons on weapons out there in Minnesota, which takes us to number 19, the Carolina Panthers, where you have Sadiq coming off the board, which will be a great help for Bryce Young. And I have them going with, they double up, they repeat first round. Actually, that makes it 3 first-round rookies in a row, doesn't it? For first-round receivers in a row for Carolina. You go from Leggett to T-Mac to Casey Concepcion for me.
Yeah, and you look at it, man. I mean, there could be a guy there. Maybe this is where we see a guy like what's the kid's name out of Clemson, right? Blake Miller, or a guy like Max Hinnicore or something there. But like they just need to continue to feed weapons into this program, and the reality is that they have invested heavily along the lines. And as you said, they've invested along the wide receivers, but I think they've already kind of, gone like we're done with Leggett already. The personality is great, right? The personality is wonderful, but he just doesn't seem to be taking the steps needed to be a dynamic player. Casey Concepcion, in this scenario, gives them that dynamic inside outside guy that can win in different ways, and just gives them a weapon that they lack, because now you've got the big guy T-Mac outside. Now you've got the smaller, shiftier Concepcion. It makes sense, dude.
We go to number 20 with the Dallas Cowboys. Who's your pick for them?
My good buddy John Onan, formerly of PFF, who's unfortunately part of the layoffs. He is a guy that does edge rushers and really knows his stuff. And he's a guy that, when we get to the Cardinals pick, spoiler alert, I'll talk about a little bit too. And I'm telling you, the fit of Malachi Lawrence to the Cowboys at pick 20, I think would be really, really strong.
That's a nice addition. Well, and especially now, I had them going with the Cowboys going with Bain, and so they've already addressed the edge. And so I have them flipping it. So you have them going corner, then edge. I had them going edge, with the 20th pick. German Okoye out of Tennessee, the other top cornerback. And so Dallas continues to rebuild that defense. I think they realize that defense needed work. They've gone out and, they get the pass rusher. They added Quinnen Williams last year via trade. They signed Jalen Thompson. Now they add McCoy to continue to make that defense better, which is what they need in that division. And then at pick 21, man, this is where things go wrong for the Cardinals. What do you have? What do you have the Pittsburgh Steelers doing?
Yeah, until the Steelers kind of clarify what's going on, I have the Cardinals guy or alleged guy in Ty Simpson going off the board to 21 to Pitt. I mean, you look at it, even if Aaron Rodgers comes back, the reality is he's 1 year, maybe 2. You got to reinvest, right? You've got to reinvest, and this is how you do it, and we'll see if it's the fit, right?
Or is it going to be Kenny Pickett all over again?
Right, exactly, and that's the way you have to look at it. And I don't know, I just truly don't know what it is, but we'll see if it's a fit for them.
So in this case, if the Cardinals move back and they end up with 9-29, but they miss out on Simpson, did they fail the first round?
It just really depends. Like I said, if they have the opportunity to take a David Bailey like they do in your scenario, and they end up not getting him, and then he ends up becoming an extremely talented player in the NFL.
They don't get the quarterback.
and then they don't get the quarterback. It's a failure, man. And there's no other way around it. And people can say, well, as long as this guy does this or this guy does this, it's like, no, that's a failure, because you were trying to manipulate and win, right, the draft, but the reality became you got played, and now you move back. You potentially missed out on, these dynamic players. And instead you're sitting there kind of holding the bag like, oh crap, what just happened, right?
Now, luckily in your scenario, they didn't lose 34. If in my scenario where they give up 34 so they get that second first round pick and then a next year pick, and they don't end up with the quarterback, that would not be great. But I don't have that happening. I have the Steelers taking Akeem Messidor, going with the edge. And he's one of those edge guys that there's some promise about. He comes out of Miami. He's the other guy. He's the non-Reuben Bain guy. He's the one that has the longer arms and he's got the better physique for the job. And he had 12.5 sacks, 17.5 tackles for loss, 4 forced fumbles. That defense was so great last year, but he put him on the other side of TJ Watt. That's going to be fun. That's going to be fun for that defense. That takes us to number 22. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I like that pick and I like that fit. And we go to 22, and we're not by any means, any stretch of the imagination, Charger fans, but we do follow the NFL quite closely. And if there's one thing that we've seen folks bitch about, it is the protection Justin Herbert gets, right?
Even though they keep drafting tackles. Oh my God. Well, they also have they have the worst luck with their tackles. Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, they just keep going down. And you have them going tackle. I have them going guard.
Yeah, and local product, Highland High School grad. Did he play with your son? Do you know?
I believe maybe because Diego graduated in 2020.
So Caleb Lomu, the Utah.
So yeah, Caleb was probably varsity when Diego was his senior year, probably.
But Caleb Lomu comes over. He's a left tackle, but he could probably play anywhere along the line that they need him to, and they desperately need him to, right? And they need that to work out. And you have them going with the better player, but in my draft he's gone, so it doesn't matter.
Correct. I have them taking the guard off the board. So Vega Ione, they've got Slater, they've got Joe Alt. Lock up that interior and hope that he doesn't get hurt too. And then we go to the Philadelphia Eagles. We're on the same page when it comes to what they want to do. We just have them taking different players. We both have them taking a tackle. I've got them taking Clemson's Blake Miller. You have them taking the Arizona State kid, Max Henichor. And yeah, they all make sense. Both of those make sense.
Yeah, it's just, it's a pick your poison, right? I'm looking at it from the perspective of Lane Johnson ain't going to be here much longer. You're looking at it from the perspective of Lane Johnson ain't going to be here much longer. So needs to work itself out, right?
Yeah, which takes us to the final pick of the third quarter of the NFL draft of the first round, which brings us to the Cleveland Browns, who have their second pick of the first round. And
we both have them going Caden, just different Cadens.
Yes, correct. You have them going offensive line, Caden Proctor. I have them going defensive line, Caden McDonald out of Ohio State. And so for me, it's an Ohio State sweep for the Cleveland Browns as they add to the defensive interior. Really good defensive interior guy in McDonald. They had Dalvin Tomlinson a couple of years ago.
Have you seen the conversation about McDonald? There are people that are saying that he could creep into the top 20, which
I think that might only happen because of the lack of top end DT talent in this draft.
And that's kind of, my point. Like the fact that either people are really, really selling things, or there is some talent gaps that we haven't even started to discuss, right?
Right. And with that, coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best of Cardinals Talk on the Web, we will bring you home, take us through the last 8 picks of the first round, starting with the Chicago Bears. That's coming next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, the Best of Cardinals Talk on the Web. At the next couple of picks, Seth and I are on the same page. We go to the Chicago Bears at 25th overall. This is where the DT comes in. And we get the kid out of Florida. Woods.
No, Clemson.
Clemson, found a Clemson correctly. Yes, if Clemson, the defensive tackle. What do you like about that fit? Because we obviously liked both the same guy for that spot.
Yeah, man, and it's a good one. And Pete Woods is going to come in, and he's going to be a guy that really endears himself to Bears fans, and he's going to potentially bring back some excitement and potentially remind them of Tommy Harris back in the day, right? Like he's just a dynamic interior guy that could be really, really talented.
Then we go to pick number 26, Buffalo Bills, on the same page there. Go receiver. Hey, they give Josh Allen a receiver when they get Denzel Boston.
Yeah, and you look at it, man, a guy that could end up being, a really big part of that offense, especially with his ability to go up and win the ball high above, right? Something that Josh Allen really hasn't had consistently. He gives them that, and he's a dynamic player. And from there, it takes us to San Francisco, and we're kind of on the same page, right?
Yes, both taking offensive tackles. Only I've got them going with Caleb Lomu, who you had coming off the board at 22 to the Chargers, while you have Blake Miller, who I had coming off the board at 23 to the Eagles. But kind of the same idea. Trent Williams was re-signed. They got him. They extended him through 2027, but right tackle is not. I mean, they could definitely use a right tackle. Like Colton McKivitz, they've been trying to replace for a couple of years, and he sticks around. But both these guys could step in year one.
Yeah, and both those guys are fits to what they need and where they're at right now as they're trying to close the gap between them, LA, and Seattle.
And then we go to Houston, and this is where we diverge. I've got them going offensive line. They get Arizona State's Max Ahinichor, which leads you to this is a fun pick. And I think D'Amico Ryans will love this kid.
Yeah, Jacob Rodriguez, the talented Texas Tech linebacker. I really went back and forth whether to go because, like, you look at their defense and it's just so good. Remember, and you look at all of it, but man, would Rodriguez not? Sorry, Malcolm Rodriguez. Sorry, I don't know why I said Jacob. Would Malcolm Rodriguez not be fun in that defense and have about 9,000 tackles?
Oh my gosh, yes. That would Jake. It is Jacob Rodriguez.
Oh, is it Jacob? Okay,
yes,
sorry.
It's Jacob Rodriguez. Jacob Rodriguez. And here's the thing. Here's another thing, being a Texas kid, Latino in Houston. That's not only a football fit, that's a cultural fit too. That's fun. Yeah. Which takes us to the 29th pick, the Cardinals' second pick of the first round. The Steelers messed up your mock draft. They did not mess up my mock draft. And I went into this mock draft under the Cardinals had a plan, which would be trade back to get a tackle and then to target Ty Simpson. I'm going to have it work out for them. Ty Simpson goes number 29 to the Cardinals, and that's important because I gave away pick number 34 as part of the deal. So they're not going to have that pick to start day 2. So they get their quarterback. We don't know, we're not sure about Ty Simpson as a prospect and as a fit for the Cardinals, but people more dialed in than we are saying that the Cardinals love Simpson, and there are people who love Simpson in this offensive scheme, as many people think it's going to be much more Kyle Shanahan-like than Sean McVay. And so getting a guy who is, kind of like Brock Purdy in skill set can have that same sort of success. But how do the Cardinals recover with no Ty Simpson at 29 for you?
Yeah, I think it just becomes maybe not a panic, but the reality being that they go in and they find, a guy that fits. And I talked about potentially corner. I talked about, potentially different fits of what they need, but they need an edge rusher. And you mentioned it when you talked about Messidor to the Steelers. And I think that fit here is the same. So, obviously you look at it, they try to go back. They tried to get Ty Simpson. They were unable to. And what ends up happening is they have to pivot. And maybe they help themselves more than they would with Ty Simpson being drafted this year. Maybe not in the long term, but at least this year, right?
Yes, which takes us to the 30th pick, Miami's second selection in the first round. Now, this is an interesting thing because you would think that they would go receiver with one of them. I had them going with the receiver at number 11. Seth, with your pick and my pick, who's Malik Willis going to throw to, as we both have him taking cornerback Colton Hood?
Yeah, I mean, that was the hard part. You look at this, they need a wide receiver. It's a desperate thing. And for me, Casey Concepcion is still on the board. But, They hired Jeff Halfley.
It's true. That was my thinking. Like they're going to want him. They're going to want that defense to be good for him.
You know, it's year
Poor
one.
Malik Willis.
You were able to get them Mekhi Lemon, and I love that pick. I think it's a great fit. I went protection and then defense, but that's the thing is, like, in these drafts specifically, you can't address every position in the first round, and so you look at it. You know, the other option here would be, to me, if Messidor is still on the board, which he's not in either of our drafts, like keeping the hometown kid there, and he comes in to rush the passer. But man, this is a tough one. I'm not a huge Concepcion fan, so I don't have him going there, but like, it would make the most sense. I went with kind of the chalky corner for the defensive coach type thing.
And that's bringing us to number 31 with the New England Patriots. Interesting. Peter Schrager had them going with a guy that, you know, is projected to go a little bit later, and he was kind of going like the Cole Strange pick that they made a few years ago, and he had them going with Keelan Rutledge because there was still Chase Basanti on the board. Going with the idea of offensive interior line, I have them going with Chase Basanti, the second best guard in the class for the Patriots, who, you know what, need to protect Drake May.
Well, and that was the hard part. I looked at this and I go, okay, they do need to help Drake May out. They need to, get him some protection, but they also need a pass rusher desperately. And I think those interior lineman types could be there on day two. I don't think a Cassius Howell level edge rusher, and we've talked about it, right? Once you start drafting guys on day two from the edge, for whatever reason, it rarely works out, right?
And that
doesn't mean they won't be good players, by the way. Just
correct. They just won't be big time producers. They're secondary guys, or they might have a year. Marcus Golden is a good example of the up and down nature of a second round edge guy. He had a couple of double digit sack seasons, but other years he was pretty quiet. But yeah, your top pass rushers, they go early, man. They go early, and that brings us to round up and wrap up the first round of this mock draft. The Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks, they have no running backs. They let Ken Walker go. He's now on the Kansas City Chiefs. Zach Charbonnet tore his ACL in the playoffs, so he's not going to be ready to start the season. They need a running back. And while they'll probably trade out of this pick, and maybe if the Cardinals don't trade back from 3, maybe that this is where the Cardinals move up to 32, potentially for Ty Simpson, if he doesn't get sniped by the Jets or by the Steelers or even by the Browns. But I have them going with a running back at the end of round 1. The other that way, two Notre Dame running backs going round with Darian Price at number 32.
Yeah, and I debated that, and I ended up leaning towards them getting another really talented, physical, and annoying defensive back, and San Diego State's Chris Johnson.
And that brings us to the end of our 10th annual mock draft. And, this will be up. I'll make this a priority to get published early on Wednesday so that you guys can listen to it. And then as the NFL draft rolls around on Thursday and you hear the first round plays out, you can mock us. But the last few years we've been, as mock drafts go, ours are on par with many of the quote unquote big names. And so keep that in mind. Some of it's guessing. Sometimes we're not dialed in. We have little bits and pieces of information, but we can also fit the pieces. And so with that'll wrap up this edition of the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best Ever Cardinals Talk on the Web, our first round mock draft. That's the only show we're going to do this week, because we will be knee deep in NFL draft content for the rest of the week. Until next week when we review what the Cardinals did, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be red, see red, and of course, rise up, see red.